Hello, this is my presentation over the European theater of World War II. The comprehension question for this unit is, describe the three chronological phases of World War II in the European theater. Phase 1 is known as the Axis Blitzkrieg. My Part 1 thesis for the European theater is, the first phase of the European theater, known as the Axis Blitzkrieg, consisted of Germany annexing non-German European countries, and it began when Hitler invaded Poland. Many people thought that the long-term cause of the World War II was that the Germans were angry about the Treaty of Versailles. Basically, the Treaty of Versailles was the punishment that Germany received for losing World War I. And those included loss of territory, they had to pay for reparations, and their military was diminished to almost nothing. These are some images depicting how Germany was forced to fulfill these punishments. So this one right here is just a newspaper article about the Treaty of Versailles. This is the Treaty of Versailles and Hitler coming out of it, so basically showing how, because the Treaty of Versailles was so harsh, that made the Germans angry and led to Hitler doing what he did. This one right here is Germany being squished down by all the reparations, and which is gigantic, so that just shows how much money they had, and it was kind of a burden to pay that off. And this right here is Germany being squished down by England, France, Great Britain, who were the major powers of World War I, and being spoon-fed the punishments that were signed in the Treaty of Versailles. Phase 1 officially started on September 1st of 1939 when Germany invaded Poland. And here's a map of Poland. Basically, they used a military tactic known as the Blitzkrieg, or other times called Lightning War. This was a tactic where a military split up their forces into little groups, and what that did was it confused their enemies, and the results of them were pretty good. The battles ended quicker, and they didn't use as much resources as they would have using other tactics. So with the Blitzkrieg, Germany defeated Poland very quickly. After this, Britain and France declare war on Germany, and here's an article showing that, and here are maps of the countries involved. Okay, next is Germany attacks Denmark and Norway. The initial attacks were on April 9th of 1940, and for Denmark, Hitler went straight for Copenhagen, which is their capital, and for Norway, he went through the ports of Narvik and Oslo. So when Hitler began to attack Denmark, Denmark's leaders knew that they couldn't fight and they didn't have the resources or power to defend themselves against the Nazi army, so they ended up surrendering in one day. And Norway received British troops, but on June 10th, they were defeated regardless. Next, Germany invades Western Europe, and that is France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. So after Germany invaded Norway and Denmark, there was peace for several months, but on May 10th, 1940, Hitler began to attack these four countries again. So the Netherlands were defeated on May 15th, so within 5 days they were defeated, and when Hitler attacked France, there was a battle that was really important, a big part of history, which was called the Battle of Dunkirk. This was the evacuation of British troops by the Allied forces from France. This occurred from the 26th of May to the 4th of June on 1940, and the Allies successfully rescued 300,000 British troops. So, yep, that's the Battle of Dunkirk, and here's a little trailer. This is a trailer for a movie, but I thought that it depicted really well, like visually, of what it would look like at the Battle of Dunkirk. Oh, that is an ad.
What has happened is a colossal military disaster. We shall go on to the end. We shall never surrender.
The call went out. We have to go to Dunkirk. Ready on the stern line.
What are you doing? You know where we're going.
Into war, George.
I'll be useful, sir.
One of ours. He's on me.
I'm on him.
The ship's about to leave.
Time to go.
They need to send more ships. Every hour the enemy pushes closer. They've activated the civilian boats. The civilians? We need destroyers. Where are we going?
Dunkirk.
I'm not going back. We know they will die. You're weekend sailors, not the bloody Navy. You should be at home.
There's no hiding from this sun. We have a job to do. Turn it around!
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall never surrender. We shall never surrender. We shall never surrender.
Where's the bloody Air Force?
Yeah, so that was a trailer for the movie Dunkirk. Oh. Okay. Here are the German tanks. So, they were called the Panzers, and there were a line of 6 tanks that they produced, and each of them were armed with different guns. Like, some of them were heavy-duty missiles, some of them were machine guns, and this was a very important part of how they defeated these European countries. Now, they only produced these 6 tanks until the end of World War II, and they were very powerful and efficient, and a very important tactic of the military tactic called the Blitzkrieg. So they were able to penetrate the defense lines because these tanks were able to take a lot of damage and still push through and break their defensive lines. On June 10th, the Germans were successfully able to penetrate Paris, which is the capital of France. So this basically meant that Germany won. So they got to them. So yeah, here's a picture of Hitler and the Eiffel Tower. So they basically penetrated the country, and this was when France acknowledged that they were defeated. On June 22nd, they signed the armistice agreement, and basically what an armistice agreement is, it's an agreement between the two opposing forces that they would cease fire, and because one side had lost or either there was too many casualties, so they decided to cease fire. And in this case, it was because Germany won and Paris and France didn't want them to keep destroying the country. So as an agreement, as part of the agreement, Germany got to occupy the northern side of France, and the southern side of France would be free of occupation. Okay. Before or during the same time period, Germany defeated Denmark, the Netherlands, and Belgium. So what that meant was that Britain now was the only force fighting against the Nazi, the only major force that was able to fight against the Nazis. Everyone else had been defeated or they weren't involved. So, Germany invades Yugoslavia and Greece. This was in 1941. So by this time, Germany was helped by Italy, Bulgaria, Hungary, and Romania. So while they were attacking Greece, British troops were sent to Greece to help. However, they were forced to retreat into this island called the island of Crete, and a few months later, the German forces found them and destroyed them. Yugoslavia surrendered on April 17th, and Greece surrendered on April 27th. So, the Battle of Britain. This happened from July 10th to October 30th, and this was a very important kind of turning point for the Allied forces. The Luftwaffe, which was what the German Air Force. They had been bombing England for several months to try to force them into submission. And they were going against the Royal Air Force, which was the Air Force of Britain. And this was the first military campaign fought purely in the air. And they were able to do this because both sides had made developments in their Air Force that was able to let them fight only in the air. That included giant bomb loads and development of new technology. This battle was a clear victory for the British, and with that, Britain stopped Germany's momentum, and this meant that Germany would no longer be able to infiltrate into Britain. Also, this battle proved that major fights could be won just using the Air Force, so this proved how powerful the Air Force was. The British Bulldog. This is Winston Churchill. He was called the British Bulldog because of his tough mentality and how he wouldn't give up or would never retreat. He led France all the way through World War II, and he was a very big part of the Allied victories. Operation Barbarossa. This was a code name for a secret invasion by Germany into Russia. So before everything started, before Phase 1 started, Germany and Russia had signed a pact. However, Hitler, under the code name of Operation Otto, assigned people to plan a secret invasion to the Soviet Union. So basically, why Germany did this was because they wanted to take over Russia and then repopulate it with German people. This initially was a success for Germans because the Russians had ignored warnings from their spies and other intelligence agencies they had planted, but they just ignored those news and they didn't think it was a big deal. However, when Germany attacked, they got caught by surprise. So in the first month, 500,000 Russians were captured and 2,000 Russian planes were destroyed. Now, regardless of kind of Germany being successful in the beginning, the Soviet Union did end up winning and defeated the Germans. So the Germans would not be able to occupy Russia. Through all of Phase 1, the Nazi high point was in 1941. They had successful attacks on Yugoslavia in April, Greece in May, and the Soviet Union in June. They also had Nazi satellites in Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, and occupied land in Ukraine, Poland, and Western Russia. Okay, so here are fun facts about World War II. In World War II, Nazis got only 3 toilet papers a day, while Americans got 22. And here's a picture. The next picture is for the fun fact. 4 of every 5 German soldiers killed on the war died on the Eastern Front. And the next one shows only 20% of the males born in the Soviet Union in 1923 survived the war. And this small picture shows a man named Calvin Graham. He was an American soldier that ended up dying in a battle, and what they found out was that he lied about his age to enlist into the US Navy, and he was actually only 12 years old. And that is the end of Phase 1. Thank you.